NYC, which was our first company. And so that was the beginning of our story, the beginning of my involvement in fashion. We got really, really lucky that we had a company that was sitting on a project that they wanted to develop patterns for this project for like 2 years, but I didn't know how to do it. Because I think a lot of the times when people are in fashion school, you know, they're the parts of fashion that are not really interesting, like making patterns, like sewing, because they are not glamorous, you know. But those are the patterns those are the items that actually get you walking, because those are the skills that are lacking outside, you know. So we got this guy. They've been sitting on this collection for 2 years. They couldn't develop it. So that was our first big job. And from then on, we went on to Kate Spade, and the list just went on from there. And we became very central for a lot of brands for developing collections for them. We developed collections for like Bill Blass, which is a huge iconic American brand. We did all of their their catalog collections. We did Vera Wang. We did a collection. So Vera Wang had a line with Coles. It's called Lavender. We developed the first collection of lavender. And then went on to a whole lot of companies. We did Chloe Savigny, we did Opening Ceremony, and later on to Kenzo, we did Rodarte. And we went on to do collections for Harrods in London, Colette in Paris, Nordstrom's. So the list just went on, you know. But we do collections for companies all over the world, Europe, Canada, Africa, and the United States. And yeah, so that's what we've been doing for a long time. Yeah. You're muted.
I know. I'm just sitting here talking to myself the whole time. Like,
okay.
Designers you've talked about working with, and just keeping it all in one place you're very accomplished, and we're so humbled to have you here speaking with us.
Oh, thank you.
Through your websites, if I share them.
Sure. I wanted today to kind of, I know they will have questions, but I wanted today to talk about, you know, where the industry is today, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
So just so you all know, before he starts talking about that, he has some amazing, Eji has a bunch, this is always in the way, amazing websites that you can really look through and get inspired and kind of understand the aesthetic. And Fashion Lab Africa, another thing that I think is really important for you all to look into, especially for those of my students that are interested in and or maybe a part of the Black Student Union. The narrative, so you know the narrative is by our very own.
All right.
So there's a feature here. And then, of course, another feature for City Junk. So all of these you can find when you look up, how do I pronounce Inui?
Enui.
So they're all on Eji's LinkedIn page. So if you decide to link in with him, you can find access to those as well. And I would suggest you linked in with him. So Eji, please take it away. Talk to us about the current state of the industry.
So, you know, for the past 12 months, right? We've all been through this pandemic, and the industry, the impact of that on the industry has been really numbing, you know? So I wanted to I thought we should have a conversation about where we are, you know? You know, because at the end of the day, the students now have such a wonderful platform, because a lot of the things that were there before are not like they used to be. So there's a whole new set of foundations that you need to build. You know, so
what would you say those foundations are?
Well, you have to look at it from different perspectives. For if you're a minority student, it's a different perspective to look at. If you're a different student, it's a different perspective to look at. But one core thing right now is that the industry itself, it's almost at a point where it's very revolutionary. Everything is starting all over again. But now it is not about being a designer. I think you have to be three things. First of all, to be successful in design these days, you have to be an environmentalist, number one. It is so important that you are an environmentalist. Then you have to be human. You have to be a businessman. And then you can be a designer. If you're not all of those things, then design fails because it doesn't have relevance anymore. So one of the most important things that's happening right now in the industry is the drive towards sustainability. So sustainability meaning, how is our ecology matching technology? So when we're thinking about making the design, creating a collection, what are the environmental impacts of that collection? Are we, how are we thinking through the process of making it? How is that process impacting the environment? And what are the technologies that we're using? Are those technologies, how do they affect, how do you apply the technology in making your product to what the environment is looking for now? At the moment, consumers are not too concerned about the product because we've all stayed 12 months without clothes, right? We've not had to dress up and go anywhere. So we know we don't need a whole lot of clothes, but we'll buy things that capture passions that we have. So it's become so important that we are producing, that we care about the environment. There's an there's an eco perspective to the fashion product now. So I think that's something that's for students, because they're going to start professions, they're going to start looking into the industry for work and for positioning themselves. It is very important that when you start envisioning your product, that the environment is important to you.
Now, Eji, can you tell me what you think? So we do have some design students in the room. We have a lot of textile students in the room. And we also have merchandising students in the room. So how do you think merchandising students and textile students can navigate that same kind of idea, but not as much through design? So textiles is still in design, right? And that's something that you're really heavily working with. But what about my merchandising students? How do they come forward with this understanding and this knowledge of the impact that sustainability and sustainable practices will have on the future of our industry?
Well, actually, the merchandising students have one of the biggest jobs in painting the picture. Merchandising is always painting the picture. That is how we communicate fashion. That's how we visualize how we want fashion to look. So the merchandising area is where fashion is actually beginning to tell the story about just this, how the ecosystem needs to look. So for a merchandising student, let's say a particular collection is focused on certain aspects of sustainability, whether it's reusability of a product, whether it's just the dyes are a certain organic element, or just the things, the items were made in a very in a social equity community where the workers are well looked after. Merchandisers can find ways to tell that story, to communicate that story, either in the way, now merchandising is mostly online, it's very virtual. So now they have so many tools as to how to tell that story, in the way that just the aesthetic of how the aesthetic is done on the website, for instance. Now, essentially, everything is virtual. So they have such an incredible opportunity to be a part of telling that story. For the textile students, sustainability is where they live, you know? It's the whole story, the whole thing about sustainability and reusability and all of these things is built with textiles as the bedrock, you know? If the textiles are sustainable, the designers go to market, or the merchandisers go to market with that story, you know? So everybody has a role to play. And, you know, I think sometimes fashion students, they get trapped into the big picture, right? Meaning maybe being the assistant designer of a house, being the head merchandiser of a house. Those are the forward-facing jobs, you know? Those are the jobs that everybody sees and the jobs that everybody's attracted to. But there are so many core competencies in fashion that can make you so strong on your own, or that can make you a very strong component of a company. So you could be a fantastic pattern maker. You could be a card designer. Now, most of our illustrations have gone to card. All our text packs are card, you know, tech packs. And then you could be a great tailor. You could be a coder. You could be a storyteller. You could be a fashion. You could be a stylist. You could be a public relations person. But there are core things: pattern making, draping, sewing, tailoring. All these things, even though you don't get to do them when you finish, but knowing them allows you to be able to really take control of your collection. If a factory is making something for you and you don't understand tailoring, you may not know if they made a good suit for you, because you don't have the technical knowledge to know if the shoulder is sitting right or wrong or not. You know? So I think it's important for students to look at the broad picture. Like now, the possibilities, the work areas in fashion are even growing wider now. You know, creating great user experience for websites. You have to understand fashion to do that, to be able to create an image that tells a story to a buyer who is buying high emotions. They're not really buying the product anymore. They're buying into the story of the product, you know?
I'm asking students to send through questions for you too as well. So students, if you do have any questions about this process, about Eji's background, how he got to where he is, the people that he's worked with so far, I have a question for you already. If you don't mind, Eji, we have some questions come through.
Yes.
So I'm going to introduce I have a couple sustainability experts here, and one of my sustainability that I even brought Sina with me has a question for you. So I'm going to introduce Evelyn. Evelyn, take it away.
Hi, I'm Evelyn. I'm a senior fashion merchandising major, and obviously sustainability is really important to you and your company. I was wondering if there was a time where you ever had to accept a trade-off, either for sustainability or for a profit in regards to sustainability?
I think that's a wonderful question. But again, you know, the beauty of that question is that sustainability is this big, wide plate, right? All of us feed from it. So you take as much as you can. I don't think that any company can be 100% sustainable, because so there's a supply chain that you work with, right? It's going to be so difficult that every aspect of your supply chain is going to be sustainable. So you're going to try to find comforts, right? You're going to find what would work. The thing is, you have to produce the product, right? So you want to make sure that you find a comfort that works for your manufacturer and works for you. And you're going to try to focus on what is competent for them. Like, what can they do that kind of lends into what you want to achieve in terms of sustainability. So let's say they say, look, my work environment is fantastic, right? But my dyes are toxic, right? So that's a tough call. You have to make a call. between those two things. So you could say, well, you could create because the collection is yours. You could create a collection. You could say, okay, which colors could you dye that are non-toxic? And they could say, oh, well, I could make my whites from non-toxic, right? Or I could make my yellows. So those are decisions that you have to make, choices that you have to make. But the good thing is you don't have to make these choices alone. You have to make these choices in community, meaning through your supply chain. You may be surprised that what you're worrying about is something somebody already does within your supply chain. So you can tailor your sustainability story to that one aspect that works. And then gradually you can increase your sustainability footprint. I don't think you can do it all. It's going to be so difficult and mostly impossible for you to continue to be alive and to do it because our supply chain has now grown to the point of our drive for sustainability, right? At the moment, the drive is more than the availability of capabilities, meaning there's not everything that we want to do sustainably that's possible. I don't know if that's, if it helped you.
It does, thank you.
That was a great
Okay.
Evelyn.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a lot of love coming through for you. Hold on 1 second. I gotta scroll back up. Hold on. Okay, all right, here we go. I'm gonna introduce Kelsey. Kelsey Chamberlain has a question for you.
Hi. First, I just wanted to say thank you for coming and speaking to us tonight. I really enjoyed listening to your story. But
Thank
I
you.
was going to ask, how does your fashion experience help when working in home? And is there any like crossovers between the two industries that you see?
That's a fantastic one. So one thing I wanted you guys to know was a lot of fashion designers who you think are really popular and may never even have studied fashion. A lot of them came from architecture. Architecture feeds a lot of fashion, like the fashion industry a lot, because they're coming with a great sense of aesthetic. And normally, they come with a great sense of aesthetic and structure, you know? So normally it translates so well into fashion. So home and fashion actually lend themselves to each other very well. I think most of my inspirations actually do come from architecture. I think it's got a certain stoicism that is just a certain, I don't know how you call it, like how to say it. It's a certain strength to it, just the way it stands still and doesn't shake so much. So it just has a lot of strength in its structure. So I tend to take a lot of um, um, influence from architecture.
Thank you.
That was excellent.
Are you what are you studying?
I'm a senior fashion merchandising major, but I do have like interest in the home and like home decor industry.
I mean, you're lucky because I think home is so powerful now. And remember, we're moving away from, to be honest with you, we're moving away from, I'm not saying we're moving away from clothes, but we're moving away from home being a way we express ourselves, the way that we no longer can express with fashion, you know? So home textiles, like what we're seeing, home textiles, just the architecture of how you want to live at home, whether it's the soft furnishings or just all the appendages of home have become very important. And I think we're still going to spend some time at home. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Talia, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes. Hi, I'm Talia.
Hi, Talia.
Hello. So my question is, so I studied 3 years of fashion design, and I'm now a senior in merchandising. And I do have knowledge with like patterning and draping. My question is, but this kind of can go for across majors. Once you entered the industry, like how did you get people to see your work and like believe in you enough to say, okay, I want to pull you in and have you work for me? Because I feel like we all kind of second guess ourselves and don't know like do I know what I'm doing, or am I knowledgeable enough to like go into a company and actually be able to offer something? Like, how were you able to have that confidence to be able to just do that?
I think I had one advantage. I went to fashion school when I was a bit older, you know? So at that point, I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew and I had an idea what the situation outside was. I knew that I probably wouldn't be able to walk into a design studio and get a job. So I felt like, okay, if they needed me and I didn't need them, my chances of survival were better. So how would they need me? I thought, okay, the one way that they would need me is if I set up my own shop and did something that I know a lot of designers don't know how to do. A lot of designers don't make patterns, you know? They really don't like it. They know how to do it, but they don't practice it. They don't like it much. So it's not attractive to them. So I think it's finding a niche where you think you can establish a need for yourself. And once you are needed, then that's your entry point, you know? So that's what we did. We just took that approach and modeled our whole business around it. And I think for the first 5 years of our company, of our business, all we did was patterns. And then we make the patterns, they take them to another store, shop that will make they'll make the samples themselves. And then we hired a tailor to stay with us. We got a sewer in, and then we make the patterns, and we say, you know, by the way, we can make the samples. And then we'll make the samples, and they'll through the runway and everything. And then eventually they started doing these things, having to go to market. They have market week, they get their orders, and then they send. We have to make the production patterns. So the sample patterns are different from the production patterns because production patterns are for real life people, not size 2, you know? So we have to take those patterns and make them into real life patterns and send them to a factory in China. And then later we thought, you know what, why don't we have our own factory? So it just grew like that. And then by 2009 or so, we had our own factory. And then we became a full service shop for. So once you came to us with a drawing, you didn't have to get out. We would do everything and then ship it to your store wherever it is, Germany, wherever. But it's just starting from that point where you think you will be needed.
Just to hop in really quick, thank you for that. Where is your factory located? Are you in the US or are you in abroad? Are you abroad?
So we're in 8 countries.
Factories
Yeah.
in 8 countries?
We have a factory in China. We have a development studio in New York, which we've moved away to China because of we didn't have enough, not enough work, not a lot of staff that we needed. So we moved that to Shanghai. And then what we did was sign partnership agreements with a number of factories. So we have 2 other factories in China, and then we have a factory in Prague, and we have a factory in Lisbon, and then we have in Istanbul, and we have in Egypt, and we have in oh my God, it's so many. We have so many factories, but they all do different things. We have a factory in Porto Alegre, and we have a factory in Sao Paulo. They all do different things. In Porto Alegre, we do shoes. In Sao Paulo, we do lingerie. In Tokyo, we do denim. And then we do all.
In Tokyo, you said?
Turkey.
Oh, Tokyo. Okay. Well,
Yeah. In Tokyo, we only buy fabrics. We buy denims. Yeah.
We're going to need to connect on that later on.
Absolutely.
Okay. Noah,
Yeah.
can I introduce Noah to ask a question?
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, Noah.
How's it going?
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being here. So I am a senior textile design student. Last semester, I had a project where I was able to interview designers, executives from different textile mills and fashion companies. And it was specifically about sustainability. And I was surprised to hear that a lot of companies in at least the textile industry, I'm not sure about fashion, were using sustainability because it's like a buzzword right now. So a lot of companies were like promoting it, talking about it, but not really following through with it. So I wasn't sure if you've seen that in any of your work that you're doing right now.
I think that's the question it's kind of close to what we were talking about earlier. Sustainability is almost unattainable itself, right? Because it's a lot of buzzwords. I think we've wrapped it up in all these banners, and these banners make it so complicated. Okay, let's say in Africa, for instance, right? Traditionally, they've made everything organically, that is sustainability at its best, right? But when you go there and you say, oh, we have to be sustainable, it's almost like people, because that banner sounds so big, people forget that they're already doing that, So sometimes I feel like because it's become such a buzzword, it's become really confusing. So you're taking people who traditionally do things organically, sustainably, and confusing them and telling them, oh, they need to learn new ways. But these new ways are actually, so the West is learning sustainability, and the West is telling the Asian man or the African guy to learn sustainability. And they're saying, oh, this is how we're sustainable. So that means the African man kind of walks away from what he does naturally to begin to learn a new way to be sustainable. So I think I feel like there's a knowledge gap between where sustainability is really happening and where sustainability is being intentioned, So in the West, we intention it. In the developing countries, it's really happening, So I think there need to be more a communication gap. It exists, but we've bannered it so much. So there are a lot of, like in Japan, for example, right? There's a lot of sustainability there, but it's almost traditional, It's not like they woke up one morning and they said, oh, want to make organic jeans and stuff. They've always had it in their culture, So to answer to your question, I think it's just, we need to make it more, we need to talk about sustainability in local dialects, Yeah, make it simple. I think that's we are all facing that problem right now in the industry. So to be honest with you, like if I have last year, we had an order for Costco, right? They wanted us to make 2 million units of something for just pajamas, but they wanted them made in Africa. And they wanted them made in a factory that had a RAP certificate. RAP means that everything has to be humanely sourced, sustainably sourced, meaning great worker environment, no discrimination, no child labor. But there are only 3 factories that had that certificate, So the reason I'm telling you this is the pressure is there from the consumer to be sustainable, in textiles. And textiles drive sustainability. It's the only one point where you achieve sustainability at a discernible level. The rest is aesthetic, meaning, okay, the worker is fine, there's no discrimination. All of those are aesthetic, but at core is the materiality, meaning, is the fabric sustainable? That's where it happens.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome, Noah.
What a great quote. And I just wrote it in the chat box. We need to speak sustainability in a local dialect. That was a very impactful quote from you. I think if that didn't impact anybody else, like, woo, he needs to write it. And your tie back to cultural implications and what it means for different cultures and how it's ingrained in them. And it's not necessarily ingrained here. And I think that's what we have on this call is the future of changing that and of rewriting that narrative. So.
Yeah, and if I could add a point for Noah. So we make our rugs sustainably, meaning, but we never, and another thing is that people don't people who do sustainability don't even say anything about it. You never had a reason to amplify it because it was so natural. You know, the rugs start from us shaving the goats, spinning the yarns, you know, dyeing them. A lot of them are dyed, and then weaving. There's no element of chemical anywhere. And that process was not forced by anybody. It was just a natural process.
Okay, let me also introduce Emily Miller. We might have time for one or two questions, maybe one question.
Okay.
Emily. So if anybody else wants to send something through, but Emily's is a great question, so I'm gonna let her ask it.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Emily. How are you?
I was having problems earlier, so I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to say hi, I'm Emily, and thank you so much for coming to speak to us today. I just wanted to kind of mention that I really loved when you talked about the revolutionary part of the industry and that we're kind of going through like a revolutionary time. So you also kind of touched upon technology kind of in the industry. So I was just wondering if you meant if it was more on a supply chain management route or if it's like different media platforms or different integrated into the industry, if you've seen a change there or a growth through that.
So I think at the moment, now one thing you have to know, fashion has always been very like the last one to be touched by sustainability. Before we spent all this time because of returns from Amazon and all of these other companies to reduce the percentage of returns, you know, and you had to rely on fitting technology for that, right? It has taken us probably 10 years and we still have not gone there. Return rates are still very high, like 33% return rates on online clothing, you know, it's still very, very high. So that's technology that we need. Now, for the last 2 years, there's been a rise in virtual fitting, which is like a lot of these companies that are helping online shops, online stores, where it's easier for you to see how something would fit you. So technology is a big partner that we need, but I don't think fashion has been that attractive to them, you know? So in terms of changes, we see a lot of changes right now in virtual fitting. I think that's an area where it's really growing, but I don't know. We do need a real partnership between fashion and technology in terms of sustainability, in terms of reusability. So if we wanted to create textiles that are going to be more reusable, of course, we need technology. We need dedicated partnerships in that space. But I will say it's moving along. COVID hasn't helped because it has really, actually, let me take that back. I think COVID has helped a lot in us going more the tech way, you know? The virtuality of everything has really pushed technology to look at fashion. Before we were really struggling, but I don't think we're close enough yet. Yeah.
Thank you. I definitely agree with that. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Does anybody else have any questions that they want to ask? We have about 4 minutes before I know a lot of you hop on to other classes.
I don't have a question. Is Pedro. This is Pedro.
Hi, Pedro.
By the way, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Speak to us. I don't really have a question, but I found it really interesting when you were responding to Talia and mentioned trying to find a place where you're needed. I think that's super important, especially in terms of branding. There's a guy named, I'm not sure if everyone knows about him, Simon Sinek, I think is how you pronounce his last name. But he has a quote where he says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I thought that was kind of like a direct tie.
Yeah.
I'm kind of running but a direct tie, like what you said in that quote really connected. And I think that's really important because if you look at most of these successful brands today, I personally believe that they're successful because of why the brand exists, not just,
Yes,
not
it's
just
true.
what they produce, et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of just, when you were replying to Talia, that kind of just stuck with me.
Thank you, Pedro. Absolutely. The thing is, right now, consumers are not buying the product anymore, to be honest. They're buying the product story. They're buying the emotionality. What is the emotion? Does the product connect to the emotional, to what appeals to them emotionally, whether it's the environment or there's got to be a story you have to tell. If you're just selling a pair of shoes, they're not really that interested. And anyway, people are not so happy now that they can jump into clothes and jump around. So you're going to have to give them a reason to buy your shoe or buy your clothes, Yeah, but I think you have to have that connection. Yeah.
And I see so many heads going like this, and it's so endearing to see the students agreeing, that you are familiar and you agree with someone that's been so successful his own right in the industry, and you already are seeing that for yourself. So I'm so happy to see you doing this with your heads and nodding and believing in sustainability and believing in everything that Eji came here to say to you today. If you don't mind, can we get a class picture, a class photo?
Yes, and I just want them to remember these three things. They have to be human, they have to be business savvy. It's all virtual, you know. These things are so important, and before they can be designers, they have to be environmentalists, they have to be human, they have to be savvy at what they do in terms of the business end of it, and the design part is the easy part for them. Yeah.
Great advice. Who is taking the picture for us today? Annalise, Talia, who's taking the picture?
I have an HP. I don't know how to screenshot. Does anybody else?
I could take it.
Okay. You want to give us a countdown?
Sure. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Got it.
Sounds like we got it. Okay.
Thank you.
This is the new world, Eji. This is the
It's true.
pictures of all of our different little screens. People are in the living room. Some people are in front of a window. Some people are in a blank wall. Everyone's different. But thank you so much for being here tonight. What an inspiration.
Yes.
I have a big feeling, so I just want to make sure it's okay with you. I do have a strong feeling that your LinkedIn might blow up this evening. So I just
Yeah. That's fine. And because now it's COVID, we do a lot of internships, do plenty of things with students. So they should feel free if there's anything that we can do, totally. Yeah.
Thank you so much for an excellent
Yeah.
talk and our continued collaboration. And we hope to host you in real life on campus sometime.
One day, sure.
Excellent.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay. Bye. Thank you. Okay.
That was amazing. Oh, he went off.